Hello, and thank you for joining us on the What Do New Teachers Need to Know podcast from the Art of Education University. My name is Tim Bogatz, and together with Janet Taylor, we have put together a series of 8 episodes directed at new teachers that share some of our best advice on a variety of topics. Some of the discussions you will hear over the course of these episodes originally appeared on the Art Ed Radio podcast, and some are new to this podcast. Sometimes we'll be answering listener questions, sometimes we'll be giving advice, and sometimes we will simply be having a discussion that shares some of our favorite strategies and advice. No matter the case, we hope that listening will be helpful for you. As Janet and I will talk about in this first episode, it's important to remember that you don't have to know everything at the beginning. This is a process, and your first year is a time for learning. No one expects you to be perfect immediately, and frankly, it's impossible to be perfect immediately. So if you only take one thing from this episode, please let it be that message. You are on a journey to becoming an amazing art teacher. You're not there yet, but we're hoping to help you with a few of those first steps along the way. Here's our conversation. Janet, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tim?
I am also doing quite well. I'm thrilled to talk about what new teachers need to know at the start of the year, because there's just so much that we need to know for the start of the year. But as I said in the introduction of this episode, as people are listening, I don't want them to get overwhelmed, because you don't have to solve everything right away. You don't have to have everything figured out immediately. Okay? It's a process to every part of teaching, to become a good teacher, to get your classroom set up, to get your curriculum figured out, to get to know your students. That doesn't happen on day one. It's kind of a long process for all of us to get all of that figured out. So, Janet, before we dive into the questions, do you have any thoughts on that? Just the idea of kind of moving slowly and realizing that you don't need to have it all figured out all at once?
Yeah, I mean, truly, like you said, it really is a journey that you go through as a teaching, through your teaching career. It's not just a one and done. And you don't have to be perfect on day one, right? Your students just need you to be there. You just need to connect. And I always feel like every school year for me, even as a veteran teacher, it's like going into kindergarten again. I get so excited, It's like the anticipation of what it's going to be like. And then after a couple of weeks, you just kind of get into your flow, and you're going to figure out what you need and don't need as you go. So give yourself some grace in that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, all these things that we talk about, whether it is connecting with colleagues or organizing your classroom or getting your supplies ready or even doing your seating charts, like that doesn't have to be immediate. Those are things that you can work toward, and that you can figure out what works for you as you kind of move through that whole process. But let's go ahead and I guess start the conversation, Janet, with the idea of setting up your classroom, because I know that's something that sort of is at the forefront of everybody's mind when they're first starting out. So I guess to keep it from being too overwhelming for people, what would be your advice as far as setting up your classroom? Like, what should teachers be thinking about, and what kinds of things do they kind of need to know?
Yeah, so I think everybody first goes to, supplies, materials, inventory of some sort. Like, what is actually in your classroom?
What do I have to use? Like, what is available to me?
Yeah, and like, what is in here that is from 1972, and I have no idea what it is, right? Some of that start is like, I think that part is really overwhelming of trying to figure out and wrap your head around that situation. So that's one. And then I'd say, kind of how your classroom is set up is another kind of thought, whether you're sharing a classroom with another art teacher, how many tables you have or desks, or what does that look like? Or are you like art on a cart, right? So that's something important to think about. And then maybe just the physical environment of your classroom. Like, are you going to put decorations on your walls, or do you have windows? Like, what is actually happening there logistically?
Yeah, I think all of that is important, because I don't know. Everybody has a little bit different situation. You just kind of need to feel it out. So, can we talk a little bit? Like, let's say you have you don't have your own classroom. Either you're sharing with somebody, or you're doing art on a cart, where you're coming into other people's classrooms. Like, what kind of advice do you have for people who are in that situation? Like, what kinds of things should they be thinking about?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I always feel like it's better to err on the side of like, I'm a guest coming into your space, right? Whether that's with a general ed classroom or it's another art teacher that you're sharing that space with. They, there's a wide variety of types of teachers that you're going to encounter. You might have, right? You might have that teacher that's like, come on in, I've made space for you already. And then there's the teacher that's like, this is all how it has to stay because that works best for me.
Yeah.
And then there's like a compromise in between all of that, right? So when you're sharing a classroom, I think it's important to find time to meet with your colleague that you're sharing that space with. So that could be like shooting an email if you have access to that. Again, new teachers, you may not even have any of this access until first day of institute or first day of school, right? But I think if you can reach out to them, they may not respond. It's summertime and, they might not want to think about school quite yet. But also just during those institute days or work, sometimes there's like teacher work times allotted, that you can make sure that you schedule some time to talk to them. And a part of that is finding out part of that is finding out what they need and what they're expecting of you, right? Or of the space.
Their expectations are important. You need to figure that out, like what they're expecting of you or from you. Just, and if you don't love that, you can maybe chat about that, but it's good to know before you go in kind of what they're looking for from you.
Yeah. And then I would also, you don't know what you don't know as a new teacher, right? So like hearing them out, maybe asking them straight up, like, what do you want this to look like? What do you expect from me? That kind of thing. But also coming in with maybe some of your own expectations and hopes, right? So those are two different things, kind of what you need out of your classroom. Like if you're teaching drawing and painting, for example, or painting, you might need room to store student artwork or to dry it, right? And having an understanding, a collaboration of how that's going to work in the classroom is really important. But also hopes, like I also would really love if I could hang up these posters that I just made over the summer. And they may say no, or they may try to find space, but those are two different things.
That's a very good point. No, it's good because, like you said, there's the ideal classroom, and there's also like what you're actually dealing with, and those are two different things. And I remember going into my first classroom, just thinking about all of the stuff that I wanted to do, like how I wanted to organize it, and how I wanted to just set everything up, and how I wanted to make it beautiful. And then I just realized I don't have time for all of this,
Yes.
And so that's another consideration there too, because you just have all these things that you may want to do, but then all of a sudden, like students just show up and it's time to go. Like even if your room is not perfect or not beautiful. So
and I have to say, sharing room though, just keep in mind those veteran teachers usually have things set up for a reason, right?
Exactly.
So that's a good chance for you to kind of sit back and observe a little bit and see how it's being used before making those big decisions.
And ask too, like if you see someone, like, why do you put these supplies here? Or why do you want, the greenware against that wall? Most teachers that you're sharing a room with will be happy to discuss with you, like why they do things like that. They probably have some good stories and some good reasons, why
right.
they're set up the way they are. So it's definitely a good learning experience, and it can help you. And I think one thing that really helped me as a teacher for organization, for classroom management, for everything was when I taught art on a cart. I had a bunch of schools that I went to, and I got to see so many classrooms. And, I would just talk to them about those things and say, hey, why do you do things like this? Tell me about how this reward system works when I was teaching elementary, or, tell me why you organize things in this way. And, just asking them or just seeing how they do things and just making mental notes of, oh, that definitely works for me, or, oh, I would never do that myself. Like I said, it was a great learning opportunity and really kind of got me to where I was as far as figuring out how I wanted to do things. And so anytime you can observe and discuss and ask questions of those teachers that you're working with, I think is a really good learning opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
All right. Let's talk supplies. You mentioned supplies. Because again, that's another one of those things where you probably have dreams of what you want to teach and the lessons you want to do. And then you may get there and look in your supply closet and those dreams do not match reality. So,
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Jen? Just kind of what to think about, what to expect when you're dealing with the supplies that you have, and sort of some best practices on what you want to do with those?
Right. So sometimes you have again, if you're working with multiple art teachers or whatnot, a lot of times you'll have supply closets or areas in the classroom, or maybe one communal one. And I would like to say this first and foremost, it's always important that you can't assume that those supplies are just for the taking, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because our teachers usually, the way it works is that by the end of the school year, there's a budget that needs to be kind of used up. It's usually a use it or lose it kind of situation. And so a lot of teachers will either buy those more expensive items that they dream for and want to use it in their curriculum, or they are planning certain amounts of supplies for particular projects or assignments that they're teaching in the upcoming school year. So if you have such a limited budget, a lot of times, it's really important that if you go in and you're like, oh my God, there's all these linoleum blocks, I'm going to do a printmaking project. And then you use that without asking. I mean, that will create a lot of problems and conflict with your teacher. That's a good way to get on someone's bad side, right? So I think it's really important to ask that kind of information first, right? And then, so my goal is always to kind of get a general idea of what I have and then use up what I have first. So I like to try to get really creative with projects, use up some old stuff. But, there's also, sometimes in your budget, you might be able to purchase things in the beginning of the school year, right? So it depends on the school. So again, some of them might request that you do it all through a purchase order through a very specific vendor. They have preferred vendors that they go through. Sometimes they have a purchase card that you can borrow, or you can ask someone to, administrator to buy certain things, and then they can do that. Sometimes you can even take that purchase card and go to a hardware store. So depending on the
favorite, we get the school credit card and you go to the hardware
store.
You're
shopping.
What do we need for a sculpture class?
It's I need all of these drill bits. I definitely need them all. Right. And chicken wire and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, so, those are kinds of outlets or ways that you can maybe access or ask for that access, in order to do that. But you have to be aware of the budget. And I think that's something that a lot of new art teachers, we didn't really learn that in college, how to use your budget. Right.
Yeah. And that's another thing with me. When I moved from elementary to high school, I was the only art teacher, for the high school. And so they're like, oh, hey, turn in your budget by Friday. And I was like, what is my budget? What do I order? How do I do this? And, I'm the only one, so there's nobody to help me. So I actually had to talk to, the secretary in the office who took care of all of that stuff. And I was like, can I just come in after school? Can you just show me how this is done? And I mean, luckily she was very helpful. She's lovely, helping me out with all of that. But yeah, I had no idea how much my budget was, what I needed to do, or anything like that. So that was a challenge.
That's a good point to ask Don't be
Yeah,
afraid to ask.
exactly.
I think a lot of us, especially new teachers, we feel like very like vulnerable, right? I should
Mhm.
know this. I should know. No, you should not have to know this already. So just make sure you're asking for
Yeah,
sure.
it's much better to go through the awkwardness of asking questions than making a big mistake. And so if
Hmm.
there's something that you don't know, just ask. And then I was just gonna say, like with your point, Janet, of using up old stuff, I think it's worthwhile the first time you go through a project, just use what you have on hand. And then as you go through that, you can learn and you can think for the future, like, oh, next time I do this project, maybe it's better with colored pencils, or next time we do this, maybe I want this type of paper for it. So yeah, just for your first time through, use what you have, and then think about what you could possibly order in the future for that.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I think you also mentioned wall decor.
Oh, yes.
There's people with very strong feelings about how
Uh-huh.
much you should put up or how little you should put up before your students come in. What are your thoughts, Janet?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I do and also what I see. How about that?
Yes,
So,
great.
right. So, first of all, first and foremost, just don't compare yourself to what
Yes.
you see, right?
Yep.
You don't have to do it all. Remember, the space is really about you and your students, and there really is no need to go crazy on day one, right?
Hmm.
I think a lot of us, again, we get really excited about having it just perfect on that first
Yeah.
day. So you know that everything will be uh, easy from then on out. And that's not really the case anyway. So give yourself some grace on that. But I think some teachers really love to set the tone of their room, right? And
Hmm.
they'll set that tone with or the energy of that they're expecting in the classroom or what
Yep. Yep.
by putting things up on the wall and having everything that they need to reference available, like anchor charts and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, I'll be honest, and maybe this is an elementary, high school thing, right? As a high school teacher, I mean, all of our classrooms look like science labs, right? They're like gray and gray cabinets and boring, usually. We might have, some student artwork from the past up that I love to do that when that's
Hmm.
available. But I really do like to have very few items in my room to begin with, because to me, I feel like I really want my students to come in and know, and I guess I articulate this to them too, right?
I was just gonna say that's a conversation I have. I think you're going. I think I know where you're going with this, and it's what I would always do too, where I'd put up, organizational systems, like you said, anchor charts, things that are
Mhm.
helpful as far as organization and instruction, and then I tell the kids the rest of this space is yours. Like
Right.
I want you to fill this with your artwork. Like I know the art room is supposed to be colorful and bright and fun, but we're not there yet. But like
Yeah,
you
100%.
you are going to get us there, and just tell them like these walls are reserved for your artwork, and so as you're creating things, we're going to put it up. That's where the decoration is going to come from.
Yeah. And they like to see that, right? They want to
Hmm.
see their voice is existing in this space, and it creates that ownership of that environment too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay, and I don't know. I guess when we talk about labeling and organization and anchor charts, I'd love to get your perspective on that too. Like for me, organization is incredibly important. I feel like the classroom runs more smoothly when everything is organized, everything is labeled. It's easy to find stuff, it's easy to clean up, and easy to put away. How much of a priority is that for you? How much of a priority do you think it should be for people? And like what are the important things to kind of think about when it comes to organization?
Yeah, good grief. I feel like when we talked about organization in another podcast, I was like, don't listen to me. I am like the least organized person ever. You should just see my studio right now. But um, yeah, I mean, but it is important, right? And for me, so first of all, you have to decide how you're going to be teaching. And again, as a new teacher, you don't really know all of that yet, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it really took me like several years just to kind of feel, okay, this is how I present myself, or this is how I'm going to
Right,
work this, right?
right.
But for me, organized classroom means everything is labeled, like drawers are labeled. I want students to know where items are. I want them to know what they can and cannot use, so I might even label that or have I guess this goes back to our supply conversation, right? If I have more expensive items, I want to maybe put that into a space that is not for them, right? Maybe locked up or maybe just away. And I want them to know what they can and cannot use that way, right? I want to have spaces for them to store artwork or for it to be a place to dry temporarily. And I also want to think about the flow of the classroom, right? Students
Yes,
can move
that's so
around.
important. So important.
And, it's exceptionally important when you realize that you have a student who has some special needs, right? Maybe in a wheelchair or maybe has like seizures or something like that. You really need to think about that kind of piece too. And you won't know that until you get your roster and all that, right?
Yep.
But I mean, I remember like sketchbooks. That's a great topic, right? Like, where do you store all of these sketchbooks? And if students don't have drawers, which is very common, that there's not a ton of storage for that in the classroom, things like crates where students can put them, per period in a crate or a couple crates is really helpful. So I think that's kind of what I'm thinking about as I start the school year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like the smallest thing ever, but if you can stand sketchbooks up in a crate where you can flip through them like they're file folders or something, that's so much easier than having a pile of 30 sketchbooks.
Yes.
Because if you're the 17th one down, like how do you even get that out of there without making a giant mess every single day? And so, it's just I don't know, minor thing to think about, but also like important.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of goes to, like, you think about how they're accessing their sketchbooks or whatever, right? They come in and they're all congregated in this one little spot, and that's not really great either, right?
That's
and you will and you'll figure that out. I mean, we also did for a long time pizza boxes, right? We'd store like artwork, any flat work would go in these pizza boxes, pull it out, and we'd have a table in the middle of the classroom so kids could come from all areas, right? Versus a corner of the classroom. And again, I'm sure I did everything where it was all in a corner thinking this will be nice and organized. And then, it took like 20 minutes for class to start. So you figure that stuff out as you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just have to be adaptable. And I think that's the important thing. If you'll find that things aren't working and you just need to be able to say to yourself, this isn't working. How can we change it? Okay, I want to ask, because a lot of teachers have stories, myself included, of coming into an art room and it's just an absolute disaster. Okay, like there's so much there, you don't even know where to start. Like, what do you think people should do? Like, how do you think they should start with that? Like, where do you begin if you're feeling overwhelmed by just the amount of stuff that's in the classroom?
Yeah. So me personally, I like to start big picture, right?
Yeah.
Again, your kids don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. I just can't say it enough. Your first day will be fine. You will be great. Just connect with the kids. So
you'll be exhausted, but
yes, there is nothing like teacher tired on that first week of school. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But yeah, I like to start at the big picture and think about more a kind of, what do I need right now? And where is this going to go? I can put everything off to the side in the meantime, right? And I can, me personally, I'm constantly organizing my spaces, to make it work. I'm working with students, asking their opinions. I'm asking students who are more advanced, or upper levels, or even like later in the years. So you might be teaching elementary and you could have a 5th grade class and you could be like, okay, everybody, where does all the paper go? And I guarantee the kids will know where these things usually have lived, right? So I think it's fine to incorporate them. It's their studio space too, and they should learn how to do that. We actually have a great YouTube series coming out, or is out now, I think, right? Yeah. And it's all about, artfully organized, and it's all about classroom organization. And it also includes even considering more hazardous or dangerous items, like how you're going to store all of those different things. How do you distribute and collect materials from students? It's a great series.
Yeah, so many great tips and tricks in there. And like I said, just little things that, you don't think about. But then once you realize like, oh, this could actually be important, it can be incredibly helpful when you learn those things. Okay, Jen,
So,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the one last piece of advice or thing to keep in mind is that let's say you are doing a project and it's like a hot mess of cleanup, right?
Yeah.
Which happens a lot, right? Maybe you run out of
Mhm.
time or you didn't think through that well enough. I think the key is always to be really reflective and responsive. So instead of beating yourself up about it, like, oh my God, that was such a miserable day,
Right.
Um, yeah, really being just, again, kind to yourself and think about like, why did that not work? And was it my instruction or was it the actual physical organization that got in the way?
That is an
Yeah.
important question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
So, I mean, those are the pieces I think that help us figure out as we go and change things as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to shift gears. I want to talk about curriculum and I guess where you start with things. So I'd love to know kind of the first things that you think are worth teaching, kind of your beginning lessons. And I don't know, I've always been a proponent of, when you are first getting kids in your classroom, like, let's create something. Like, you have an exciting classroom, you have an exciting subject that you're teaching. Like, let's make it exciting. Let's not go over the syllabus and spend forever on the seating chart and rules and expectations. I want to get right into it and eventually like get working on lessons, projects, something that we do. So, what about you? Like, what are the first things that you teach? What are the beginning lessons? Like, where do you go at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, so I'm with you. I do not go over the syllabus. I mean, the other piece in high school we go over syllabus, right? That's like a big piece
Mhm.
that you're expected to do at some point.
Yeah.
But I feel like oftentimes kids are coming in and out of your class too, right? They might be dropping your class, changing their
Mhm.
schedule, things like
Mhm.
that, and it's just not worth to kind of go over it and then have to go over it
I
again.
mean, like,
That kind
yeah,
of stuff.
like the syllabus on
Yeah,
day 5 is not any different than the syllabus on day 1. Like, you can get to it
yeah.
eventually.
Yes. And I also like to put my procedures and that kind of stuff. I like to embed it as we're working so
Exactly.
it
Exactly.
builds that connection. Yeah. Cause I feel like that first day, if you're just talking, they're
Like,
totally
nobody's
zoned
gonna look at
out.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just like, what is this classroom that I'm in? So anyway, I also like to do everything hands on. I just feel like they just really, they come to an art room, they want to create, and it just really engages them directly into the culture of your classroom by doing that.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean you necessarily have to jump into like coil vessels right on
Right,
day
like, you
one.
don't
Like I'm
need to
not
break
saying that.
out the full, like, acrylic on
Yeah.
canvas on the first day.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I also have to say that, a lot of times in those PDs, they tell you to like institute days, they give you these ideas of like icebreakers and things. I'll be honest, I do not do any of that kind of stuff either. I like to kind of combine it all together so that it is,
Mhm.
again, authentic to art making. Um, so the activities that I like to do, I basically think about things that I want them to learn up front, but I want to embed it into what they're doing so it's fun.
Yes.
So maybe like, for example, we have Google Classroom, we have Google Slides. I want them to be able to use Google Slides in some capacity. Okay. So I'm going to do a really fun collaborative project because I want them to get to know each other and I want them to start to feel comfortable. And then I want them to create something together and then I'll have them post that on a Google Slides, right? So now I
Mhm.
don't have to teach doing that again, right? It just is part of that. And I think by now a lot of kids know how to do it, but you never know, right? And then they have to kind of look through your Google Classroom and find things. And I think some of that is just part of the process. And they're still creating. So that's kind of my plan. I'm actually, my fingers are crossed. I'm planning on sharing a bunch of my starter activities on my Instagram account
Okay.
in the next couple of weeks because I know people were like, yes, what do you do? What does this actually look like?
Yep.
But I like to do things where they're like interviewing each other and then maybe drawing a portrait of their partner or maybe like a medal of honor that describes their partner, something that showcases that. And what's so great about having them work is they're being social, which is really great and
Yes.
uncomfortable in the beginning,
It
right?
is.
Like
It's
they,
uncomfortable for a lot of
yeah.
kids.
And you'll notice like which kids know each other right off the bat. You'll notice which kids don't like working together.
Uh-huh.
A lot of information happens you'll see how they create, how they think through your prompts. And they're just like a 2-day activity, you know, and you just gain so much information from them. So yeah, like anytime there's like a scavenger hunt for tools in the room, or maybe do something for photo like that, or in jewelry, I'm planning on doing my paper pair up kind of thing where kids are creating a paper version of jewelry that kind of gives me a sense of their design aesthetic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even something as simple as taking a ball of clay, rolling it into, or clump of clay, right? Rolling it into a ball, pulling it apart, trying to stick it back together without slip and score, or score and slip, right? That is like so tactile and engaging for them to do that.
Mhm.
And it's just so easy, and they're just like really primed for the next day. So
Yeah,
just any of that
absolutely.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, and so then moving on past that, like those are great first day,
Mhm.
first week activities.
Mhm.
Like where do you start when it comes to, and I don't even want to say projects or lessons
Mhm.
necessarily because you may not be there yet, but like what are the next steps for you?
Yeah. So for me, I like to have my students make sketchbooks or sketchbook
Mhm.
covers if they were pre-purchased.
Yeah.
That gives them a lot of space to explore materials. I can teach some very small techniques or concepts. So it could be like shading, or it could be elements and principles. Even in my jewelry class, like we do sketchbooks, right? And it's amazing. We hand stitch them, and it's always amazing to me to see which kids can follow that direction, because
Oh
it's not
yeah. Yeah.
that easy,
Right.
right?
Not
Yeah.
necessarily intuitive. So.
No, no. But anything that they can really express themselves, it helps get them warmed up. They have ownership over it. And then they also, again, I use sketchbooks. It's so important because to me, the process of creating is important. And I want them to know that that is an integral part of our curriculum throughout the year, right?
Yeah.
So then of course, then we jump into the juicy stuff, more technical stuff, or, you know, things like that. So yeah, but I do want to share a disclaimer about any and all of this, right?
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this in our curriculum episode, but I way over plan in the beginning. Like me, even to this day, I'm sitting there making every single day. What is the topic? I jot down little notes about what I want to talk about. I make sure I have like a learning target or something like that. And then what do I have to prep for it? And it's crazy how insane I get. And that's just me, right? And that's just how my brain works, I think, because I'm really all over the place, and I need to have something that I can stick to. But then really, as we get going, it just flows, and you get into this kind of system. The kids get into it, and it's totally fine. And I feel like whenever things start to get a little loose or sloppy, or things don't feel like they're aligning, I do come back to that planning to help me and stay my focus. So yeah, so for new teachers, I definitely would kind of plan out at least your first maybe 2 to 3 weeks, even if it's just generally speaking, like, I know I'm going to talk about this or do that. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, transition from one lesson to another, one skill to another is always good to think about. My version of over planning was putting too much into one particular session. Like, oh, I know I can't fit this into the time allotted, but having dead time is just the bane of my existence. It's like my biggest fear.
Yes.
And so like, oh, if we get done early, we're going to do this. And then if we finish that, then we're going to do this. And so I'd have like 3 extra activities planned, even if they're just games or something. But, I really hated that. Okay, you guys can just get on your phones for the next 8 minutes. Like,
yes. Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah, I do not want to do that. And so I always over planned in that direction.
Yeah.
But
what's great about that is that you can, like, if you didn't get to everything in that class period, you can just roll it over to the next day, and that's okay too, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Or if you have, time fillers or quizzes or games or, just some quick informal assessments or whatever, like save those for the future. Like you have them planned out, you know what to do. You'll use them eventually. So it's not like you're wasting time planning those. Okay. Next topic. I would love to chat a little bit more. We talked a little bit at the beginning of this episode about, just interacting with the people that you're sharing a room with or people that you're coming into contact with. So can we chat more about how we like interact with colleagues? And I'd love to know, whether, or I guess just how you collaborate or how you talk to people. Like if you're in elementary, like how do you work with the classroom teachers? If you're in secondary, how do you work with people who are in different subject areas? Like what's your advice for that, Janet?
Yeah. So, again, I always love to be a communicator with all of my colleagues, right? I think that's just a really important piece, is to talking about what's happening, and classroom teachers in elementary might have history with kids or families. So it's for better or worse, truthfully.
Right.
So sometimes you have to be careful about what you take in, and how that might impact your bias or judgment. I mean, truthfully, right? But vice versa, like just think about it, over the years, you're going to be that teacher that knows all the kids, and you'll be able to give that advice back to the next level teacher, and I think, that sometimes like the teachers will say, oh, this kid is really struggling with this behavior. And they come in your class and they're like perfect angels, or vice versa.
Yeah. So I don't know. I very quickly learned to dismiss anything that had to do with like, oh, that kid's terrible for me. Like,
oh yeah,
of course they're terrible for you. They don't like your subject. They don't like the way you teach.
Right.
Like, you and I are different people, so they might be great for me. And so I don't know. I learned to try and not let that bias me. And I also tried to learn to not say that about kids to other teachers. I tried to not talk badly about kids because, like you said, you don't want to have those preformed notions. Like kids deserve a chance to stand on their own in your classroom and kind of learn what's going on there. So
I think, setting up time to meet with them, though, is important. Having something to jot some notes with, I think, is important, right? And having kind of a clear, I don't want to say agenda sounds, I don't mean it like,
no, like, but if you have questions in mind that you want to ask them or specific topics that you want to talk about, don't just go in and be like, so how's it going? Like,
right. They don't have time for that, right? Yeah.
No, it's
right.
Like,
you don't want any wasted.
Thanks for talking to me. I would love to hear what you have to say about this, or I'd love to know how you handle this. Have something specific that you want to talk to them about.
Yeah. And sometimes that may, you can just send an email in the beginning, like, hey, I'm really excited to teach your class. Is there something, blah, blah, blah. And then later, those communications usually become more apparent. Like, okay, I'm seeing this or I'm seeing that. But I think it's really important to hear the classroom teacher's expectations so that you can see what actually aligns with both of you. But I just want to keep this in mind that you're going to have like a million teachers with different behavioral plans and classroom management plans. And you do not need to follow their stuff like that, right? Because again, your classroom is different and you have different needs. It's unique. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes when those conversations happen, just kind of listen to what they have to say and you do what you need to do in that regard.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Another topic kind of along the same lines that I wanted to talk about as far as just working with colleagues is just the idea of using their lessons or asking people to share with you what they have. Like, when do you think that's okay? Like, is it always okay to say, hey, can you share that with me? And if you are asking somebody to share, like, what are best practices around that?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's never a bad thing to just ask. I think how you ask is important though, right? The worst they can say is no. And that may be a little awkward for them to have to say no. And hopefully they'll explain why. But really sharing work is a really big deal. And teachers take truly years to create their curriculum, perfect things, create personal handouts and other types of resources. So it's just really important to be respectful of that. And you should definitely be asking, like you said, as opposed to assuming that you can just take it, right? I also think that if you make something, if let's say you have that kind of relationship where they shared something with you and you make something or tweak anything of theirs, make sure that you're making your own copy of that. So you're not changing theirs, right? But also share it back. And they may not care at all. They may be like, whatever, I'm not ever going to look at this. This is not going to do it my ways. But I mean, I think it just shows that you are willing to be, collaborative in that way. So they may actually really love your changes and actually want to adjust theirs. And that may start a really wonderful collaboration between the two of you,
Mm-hmm.
truly.
Mm-hmm.
But you do need to be understanding that if they don't want to share something, that's kind of what you have to go with. It is what it is. I'd say if you're teaching the same course, like
Yes, I wanted to
drawing and
ask you
painting
about
one,
that. Like,
drawing and
if
painting one, yeah.
yeah, if we're both teaching the same drawing class, or we're both teaching the same sculpture class, like that can be a little challenging sometimes. So, just quick
Yeah.
advice on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on how your school is run, right? Some are very strict, like you have to have the same exact assignments or lessons or units, because if a kid transfers to another school in your district, they have to have the same or whatever it is, right? And others are more loosey goosey, right? So I would say, if you're teaching the same course, reach out to them, make sure that you're collaborating with them. And if they don't want to collaborate, that happens. Or let's say they go the other way and go, just do whatever. It's totally fine. I mean, then you have at least, what I would say is ask for at least an outline of the techniques or concepts that
Yeah.
need to be taught. So that your kids have the same foundation, even if your assignments, projects, artwork looks different.
Yeah, very well said. Because I think a lot of art teachers are like that, or they're just, oh, you can teach whatever, they'll be fine. You can push them on that and say, yeah, I know I have a lot of ideas on what I want to do. Can you just share with me just general ideas on what you're doing to make sure we're kind of on the same page? And yeah, I think aligning that is good, even if it's not, day by day alignment, like you talked about, just making sure that your kids have the same concepts that they know before they move on is definitely worthwhile. Okay, another big topic that I wanted to ask you about, because I know you have experience with this, Janet, is IEPs and 504s, because I'm just thinking back to my experience as a new teacher coming to the high school, and all of a sudden in my mailbox, I have all of these copies of different IEPs and 504 plans that just kind of show up from like multiple different special ed teachers. And I had never talked to these people before, and I just see like these plans, and I'm like, I don't necessarily know what these are, and I definitely don't know what I'm supposed to do with them.
Right.
And so I guess I would love to hear from you, because I know you've done work with, I think, were you a 504 coordinator? Can you just give us a quick rundown on what new teachers need to know about 504 plans, about IEPs, the best ways to work with special ed teachers, with students, with parents, just everything kind of involved with that? Can you give us a rundown of what we need to know? I know that's
like a
big
whole
question.
other podcast. Yeah, right. So I can speak as a teacher and as a previous 504 coordinator. And I will put this out there, like, does anybody know what a 504 coordinator does or is,
Yeah.
Like the IEP, we hear a lot about IEPs and in undergrad probably, or in a grad program or whatever, but the individualized education planning falls under IDEA, and it's a for special needs. So usually modifying or adapting, that kind of stuff. And there's usually assigned like minutes, social work minutes, or OT, PT kind of things. The 504 is just there to kind of level the playing field for students who have disabilities. So it's not modifying the curriculum. It's just providing access so that everybody can get what they need. So these, are wide ranging in what can cover under a 504 or an IEP. And I just would like to say first and foremost that if you see an IEP or 504 with a diagnosis on it, it is not your job to question that or to diagnose a student at all.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It is your job to see what they need in order to access their education. That is what it's in place for. So I will say it is so essential to review these 504s or IEPs that are coming your way from, like you said, all these different avenues. And they could be from a case manager. It could be from the assistant principal. It could be from the principal. It could be from a social worker. I mean, you're like inundated going, where, what, who is this person? Like you said. Again, it varies by school and how you access this, and what it looks like. So some schools will print out an at a glance or a summary sheet for you, which I love because that actually tells me just what I need and not all of the nitty
Yeah,
gritty.
not the full plan.
Yeah, because the full plans can be like 30 pages long, right? And you're like sifting through that. Some of them will be just flagged in gradebooks. So that's like a pretty new thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember I had Power School was what we used. But,
Power School, yep.
You know, we just see a little flag on there. I'm like, oh, was nobody going to tell me about this? Like, am I just lucky that I saw this like in the gradebook? So yeah, anyway.
Yeah. And so like covered under, I should go back to the variety that's covered under, right? You might have a student with a 504 that has like peanut allergy, like severe peanut allergy and has to keep an EpiPen, you know? You might have a student who is blind. You might have a student who sits in a wheelchair. You might have a student who has multi-needs, right? All the different pieces. So you really have to kind of gather kind of information. So what I do, because it's really overwhelming, and you don't even know these kids anyway, right? Usually, especially as a new teacher, right? You're not going to know them. And it's just like a name in your book. So what I like to do is I go through quickly the 504s and IEPs and see if there's anything that is really outstanding. Like this kid has seizures. I should know about that right off the bat. This kid has peanut allergies. Okay, well, we're not, doing any food in my classroom to start with. So I'll just make a blanket statement in my classroom that there's no, there's a peanut allergy, etc.
Yeah.
But in high school, I often actually, when I was a 504 coordinator, we would always ask the kids to advocate for themselves. So that you might have students who come up to you and be like, hey, I'm in your class and I have a 504, or you might get an email that says, hey, I'm in your class and I have this IEP. Let me know if you have questions. But I also think it's important for you to connect with your kids. And I'm not saying to do that like out in the open, right?
Hey, I saw your 504. No.
Right. You have ADHD. Thanks. Okay.
Right. Please do not do that.
Do not do that. Yes, that's what not to do.
For everyone listening, not the way to approach it.
No.
Can you tell us how we should approach it?
Yeah. So what you should do, again, is for things like, for example, ADHD is a good thing just to monitor and observe the kid, right? Because it looks very different, and what people think of the stigma of ADHD and what it can look like are very vastly different, especially if a kid is medicated or has coping strategies. But, if you, like, I had a student who had seizures, like I go up to her, she's coming in, kids are coming in my classroom. She happens to come in at the end by herself, and I just stopped her real quick by the door. Hey, I saw you have a 504 plan. Is where you're sitting okay? Do you need anything? Is the stool too high? And she's like, yeah, I do actually need a shorter. Perfect, and that's like private, one-on-one,
and
conversation, right?
Less than 30 seconds.
Yes,
like it's easy to do, but it's incredibly worthwhile. Okay,
I will put this out though. In elementary, most of these kids, unless they've had an environment where the parents talk about this and you should not be talking to them about that. Yes, do not be talking about that with them, because they don't know what they don't know at that point. So I forgot I should say that. Yeah. Okay. After I go through and see any like flags that I need to know about, or students that I need to make sure I address right off the bat, I wait until I get to know my students in the first couple weeks. Then I go back through them and I actually am able to connect who that kid is and what their need is. A lot of times you might forget that a kid has 504 and IEP. And I will also put this advice: never say that to a parent. I mean, we are human beings, right? And maybe their needs are just not apparent in your classroom, or not yet. But to say that, oh, I didn't know that kid had a 504 is a huge problem. Legally, actually, because this is a legal situation. Yeah. So, just make sure you're constantly going back and reviewing. And I also noticed that kids, that maybe their invisible situation, their invisible disability, kind of starts to show up a little bit later. I'm more aware of it. That's an opportunity then for me to connect with a case manager or counselor, and have those conversations. Sometimes those people forget to put them into the grade book. I've had that situation where I'm like, hey, this kid, like something's a little bit different here. I'm not sure. I can't put my finger on it. And they're like, oh yeah, did you get their IEP? And I'm like, no, that would be really helpful. So definitely reach out to people and don't be afraid, but you're also don't have to be like the 504 IEP police, right? As far as that goes. So just keep that aware.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Okay, last topic that I want to cover with you is just the idea of communication. And I think that's something that's big and scary and intimidating for a lot of new teachers, communicating with colleagues, communicating with parents, like just everybody that you're going to be working with in the building and outside of the building, both. And so I guess just big picture, like what do you think new teachers need to be ready for as far as communication, like going into their first year?
Yeah. So, and I think it's really hard because you don't know your school environment yet or who you should be communicating with always. But before school starts or within that first week of starting, I think it's important to communicate with your administration and any colleagues that you know you're going to be working closely with. Mm-hmm. So like at elementary, you might be working closely with your principal, right? I think it's important to reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm totally situated now. I'd love to have a conversation with you about X, Y, and Z, or I just wanted to share that I'm excited to be here and I'm looking forward to a great year. I think any way to communicate in that way is a positive foundation, right?
Yeah.
So that can be usually, I would say, through an email. Don't expect a reply until institute or even a week into school. You could introduce yourself to other colleagues that you know might be good to work with, or like I said, just share that you're excited to work with them. Yeah. And as far as administration, that could be like your department chair, like I said, that you work with directly, or it could be like I said, the principal, right? But I would say that's a great time also to follow up with any questions that you might have. A timeline of getting keys, supplies, etc. Again, before school starts or within that first week to make sure you're set. Mm-hmm. The other people I think are really important to communicate with or connect with in some way in the first, week or two, is your building management team. So that's like your custodians that's going to take amazing care of you. That's any assistants like the secretaries or administrative assistants. That are going to help you. Those people are actually really in charge more than like a principal or administrator, right?
On
Those
a day-to-day,
yes.
day-to-day basis, absolutely.
They know everything, so for sure.
No, so I think it's good to talk to all of them. Just ask them, hey, what do I need to know about the building here? Yeah. Like, is there anything you can tell me that maybe the principal hasn't covered or whatever. And then I think with your custodial team, I would find out who's going to be cleaning your room and just go introduce yourself. Cause like that can become a tense situation real quick if, they're coming into the art room, which is likely the dirtiest room in the building, over and over, and just talk to them like, hey, what do you need from me? Like, what can I do? What can my students do to make your life a little bit easier when you come in to clean? Like, do you need chairs up on tables? Do you need a suite? Like, things like that. And just, and hopefully they have reasonable expectations, but it's good to have that conversation, just kind of see what you can do to make their life a little bit easier.
Yeah. And then usually within the first week or two, I do like to send out an introduction of myself to parents and or students, depending on the level. I'll send out maybe an email or a newsletter. I might set up like a template that I'll use every time. But basically it's like, here's a little bit about me. Let's parents know that you really care about art and their artist experience this year, right? That advocacy piece. And then what you might be working on, like kind of setting up some anticipation for the classroom. Like, hey, I know we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z in the class, and I'm really excited for it. And then I usually like to put a few, classroom expectations, and I really mean few, like short and sweet. Yes. Like, this is what you can expect. This is what I expect, and this is how it is. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, usually again, in the first week or two, I usually follow up with case managers, as we talked about, if needed, or social workers or counselors or whoever's in charge of those paperwork plans.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I think all of that is vital. But just like everything else we've been saying today, like don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to have conversations. Don't be afraid to ask for advice on any of that stuff with any of those people that we just talked about. So, just try not to keep to yourself in your room too much, because the more you can reach out, the more you can learn from those people. I think the better off that you're going to be. So, Janet, any other advice, anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap things up here?
I mean, again, this is a lot of information, and you're going to start your school year with just your brain is going to be inundated with information, right? Take as many notes as you can, jot down things, where you can find things, how you can access everything, and keep that all in a folder of some sort, right? So that you can always refer back to it. I think that's really important. And I know this episode, our new teacher podcast episodes are on the longer side because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend revisiting them, listening in chunks again, because I think we've had comments from people saying, "Oh, I'm a veteran teacher, and these are excellent podcasts, episodes." And I think just keep that in mind. You don't need to know everything on day one.
Yeah, that's what we started the episode with, and I think that's a good message to close it with as well. You're not going to be perfect on day one. It takes time to learn all of these things. It takes time to do all of these things. It takes a lot of time to really become who you are as a teacher and become your best self. And I think, patience is kind of the key word here, because it will take a while to get everything where you want it to be. But I think that's something that everybody needs to keep in mind. So, Janet, thank you so much. Love these conversations as always, and appreciate all of your advice here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you to Janet for all of her ideas and for that entire discussion. I hope it was worthwhile for you to listen. And going back to that first point that we talked about at the beginning of the episode, you don't need to solve all of these problems at once. You don't have to do all of these things right now. You can prioritize, work on things piece by piece. You can solve one problem at a time, and then you can spend time reflecting and thinking about what's working, what isn't, and what you can do to help yourself run a great art room. So I hope this episode can help you, and I hope you can reflect on some of those ideas. And all of this can be a good starting point on that journey that we talked about to you becoming an amazing art teacher. Our next episode, episode 2, will be all about what new teachers need to know about organization. We hope to have you join us. Thank you for listening.